Have you ever walked away from a conversation or maybe a meeting feeling just completely inexplicably exhausted, and you can't quite put your finger on why? Like you didn't even argue, nothing overtly terrible actually happened, yet somehow your mental battery is just suddenly sitting at zero. Well, in this explainer, we're going to decode the subtle, highly specific body language of toxic influence. We're going to build up your interpersonal sensitivity so you can spot these signs of manipulation way before they drain your clarity and ultimately, protect your mental well-being. It is so easy to miss these behavioral cues if you don't know exactly what to look for. But trust me, once you understand the mechanics behind them, you're literally never going to be able to unsee them again. Okay, let's dive right into this really powerful concept. The quote goes, "Most people don't notice a toxic person until their own life begins a silent collapse." Really think about that phrasing for a second. Our lives, our careers, our mental health, they are rarely derailed by one massive cinematic disaster, right? Instead, they're quietly worn down over time by the tiny daily drains caused by the people we often call energy vampires. It's a silent collapse. It's not a wrecking ball. It's more like water slowly eroding a rock. It happens so gradually, completely under the radar, stripping away your cognitive energy bit by bit until you wake up one day and realize, wow, I have absolutely nothing left in the tank. And understanding this dynamic brilliantly illustrates the real stakes of who we're actually allowing into our inner circles. There is a stark biological and cognitive difference between operating in survival mode and operating in growth mode. These energy vampires, they use very specific behaviors to actively force your brain out of a thriving, clear, mentally strong growth mode and trap it firmly in a drained, highly reactive survival mode. Imagine that feeling of a completely depleted battery versus a flourishing plant. When you're constantly reacting to someone else's chaos and your bandwidth is entirely tapped out, you simply do not have the cognitive resources left to focus on your own growth, your own goals, or just your own peace.
So let's look at section 1, the egos. Blame and forced performance.
The very first red flag you absolutely need to watch out for is relentless finger pointing. I mean, we've all encountered someone who operates exactly like this, right? This is the individual who will repeatedly make the exact same mistakes over and over again, but will constantly shift the blame to absolutely everyone and everything but themselves. Think of that colleague who messes up a critical group project, but somehow, miraculously, manages to make it an issue with the software they were using or the way someone else formatted an email or even, the lighting in the room. Their body language is almost always directed outward, literally and metaphorically projecting their own faults onto you or the environment around them. It's never an internal reflection, ever. Now, what's truly fascinating here is the psychology behind that constantly pointing finger. It's a documented cognitive marker known as low metacognition. It isn't just some annoying personality quirk, it's a literal structural blind spot. Metacognition is, well, simply put, it's your ability to think about your own thinking. It's the capacity to reflect on your own behavior and actually recognize your own missteps. Because these individuals completely lack this reflective ability, they just cannot process their own faults. The cognitive dissonance is way too painful for them. So the result? They reflexively shift the blame outward as a defense mechanism just to protect their own fragile ego from shattering. And that defense mechanism leads us straight to the second red flag, forced social pressure. Have you ever been around someone where you feel like you're basically walking a tightrope, like you're constantly having to perform just to keep them stable? They thrive on creating an environment where you are perpetually on edge, trying to manage their fluctuating moods and bending over backwards just to keep the peace so you don't fall off that rope. It is incredibly exhausting because in those moments, your energy isn't even yours anymore. Your mental resources are entirely dedicated to navigating their forced social dynamic and ensuring their ego remains totally unthreatened. Moving right along to section 2, the drains, negativity, and ignored needs. The third red flag is a phenomenon known as mirrored negativity. This happens when a person constantly reflects and amplifies negative emotions, turning literally any interaction into this massive echo chamber of stress. Imagine you have a genuinely bad day and you just need to vent for a second. Instead of actually listening, this person suddenly has a story about how their day was somehow so much worse, completely hijacking the interaction. By doing this constantly, they're directly responsible for shoving your brain right back down into that anxious survival mode. Instead of acting as a sounding board to help you find clarity, their very presence guarantees you remain trapped in a state of unprocessed emotions and elevated cortisol levels. Which brings us to the fourth flag, and this one is a glaring lack of true interpersonal connection, a remarkably short attention span the exact moment the topic shifts to your needs. This is conversational narcissism at its absolute finest.
They can talk for hours about their own problems, their own triumphs, their own daily trivialities. But the second you try to express what you are going through, man, it feels like hitting a brick wall. The cord just gets entirely unplugged. They check out, they start looking around the room, they abruptly change the subject back to themselves, or suddenly, oh, look at that, they remember they have somewhere else they urgently need to be. It turns out there is actual cognitive science behind this deeply frustrating selfishness. That sudden drop in attention, it isn't just a matter of them being rude. Actually, it's frequently a symptom of weak executive function. You can think of executive function kind of like the brain's RAM. It manages focus, emotional regulation, and working memory. When someone has a deficit here, they physically cannot regulate their own focus long enough to process another person's emotional reality. They lack the cognitive bandwidth to step outside their own internal monologue. They quite literally cannot hold space for you, which means a balanced, mutually supportive relationship with them is structurally impossible.
All right, Section 3, the breach. Breaching your personal boundaries.
Red flag number 5 is perhaps the most invasive of the whole bunch. They treat your personal boundaries like unauthorized access into a secure computer system. They do not respect the fences you put up. Instead, they operate like a hacker running a script, constantly pinging your boundaries with small favors, passive-aggressive comments, or subtle guilt trips, really just a test for weaknesses in your mental firewall. They want to see exactly how much they can get away with and precisely how much they can extract from your cognitive bandwidth. It's this relentless, deliberate probing of your mental space, designed to find the exact pressure point where you will finally cave in and just grant them access.
Finally, Section 4, the resolution. Reclaiming your cognitive bandwidth.
Because here is the hard truth of the matter. If even one of these personalities is operating unchecked in your life right now, your mental strength is actively facing that silent collapse we talked about at the very beginning. You simply cannot thrive, you cannot build, and you cannot focus while someone is continuously siphoning your energy. To protect your bandwidth and permanently change your life's direction, you have to systematically remove these drains. You need to confidently identify these 5 red flags, build your interpersonal sensitivity, and firmly block unauthorized access to your boundaries so you can make that vital shift back into growth mode. Mastering this exact process is the kind of deep dive we explore here, so if you want to keep equipping yourself with the tools to change your direction, joining the Mindpulse HQ community is a fantastic next step.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one critical, really urgent question. I want you to take a moment today to truly audit your own social circle, your workplace, your daily interactions. Ask yourself honestly, who are you currently allowing to hack your mental bandwidth? Who has unauthorized access to your mind? Because identifying the leak is always the first step to fixing it. It is time to take your energy back. We'll see you in the next one.